Welcome to Empowered to Grow, the podcast. I am your host, Hanan Basha, the business doctor. Following our conversations with empowered women who woke up one day and consciously claimed, I am more than enough, I am worthy, I am empowered to grow. And along their empowering journey towards realizing their own potential and their quest for growth, they became a beacon of hope and guidance for others. May you also find your inner power to grow. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Unchartered discussion episode of Empowered to Grow. This is your host, Hanan Basha, and I still have my lovely friend, Katie Mapondera, with me. And Katie is a life coach and executive coach. She specializes as a consultant in the leadership field, has done a lot of studying and a lot of certifications in this field. And I was talking to her about something that I know personally I had to work through and I had to progress through as well. And it's women in leadership positions and how we show up as within the workplace, within the leadership positions, and how sometimes I know from my personal experience that conditioning has impacted me a lot in showing up fully, in showing up authentically. Like, you know, again, and this is not necessarily just the Middle East, but I think this is an international thing where, you know, I've had the conversations with women from around the world, and there's always these expectations that come along with what you're supposed to do, what you're expected to do, to say, to act as a woman within a leadership position, that you sometimes have to, well, we can go into the masculine energy and the feminine energy, but that's another place. But there's sometimes you have to embody things, or you have to embody a persona that doesn't necessarily represent you. And that impacts you and what you bring to the table because it overshadows your value.
No, I resonate.
Yeah,
no, I really resonate with what you're saying. And it's funny you bring up that masculine and feminine energy, because my experience, my personal experience with it is I think, for one thing, I had been conditioned that leadership means bringing masculine energy. And I didn't understand initially how my feminine energy would be so valuable as a leader. You know, my masculine side being very sort of go, solutions oriented, you know, hard driving. And come to find out, you know, we talked about, you know, how I was doing all of the studying and research, and come to find out it's all of the quote unquote soft elements that really are the core of leadership and really are what define effective teams versus more effective versus less effective teams. So it has been interesting. I think there's also that element of, for me, it's been as well, okay, if I step too much into my power and I flex my power, I'm noticing people feel uncomfortable with that. Yeah. So is there a way that I need to fit into more traditional notions of what it means to be feminine in this role, but even if it doesn't feel authentic, I need to make sure I don't make people feel threatened with how I step fully into my power, because somehow it doesn't fit for people that I'm a woman and stepping into my power in this way. And I see you nodding. What's resonating?
Because that's I think this is it. It's as I found myself as a woman in whatever managerial leadership position, something, I tend to think a lot and overthink about how I'm going to show up and how others are viewing me and how I'm impacting them and how they're reacting to me versus who I am and, you know, what's the value? What am I bringing to the table? And I don't want to make an assumption, but I'm going to say from my own perspective, I see that men don't do that. They don't stop to say, hang on a second, are they going to like this? Are they uncomfortable with my approach? It's like, okay, this is what we're doing, and this is what's expected of you, and these are the roles, and these are responsibilities, now go, you know? And I think when, again, the notion of bringing compassion of bringing empathy, of bringing understanding and accommodating those around you and everything, that immediately gets dubbed as you're too soft. These are not soft skills. You're just too soft. Or no, that's not the way to go. Or no, that's because you're a woman. You get labeled along the way. I know I have, I whether to my face or behind my back, but I got labeled of how I approached the positions I was in.
Yes. No, that really resonates. And actually, as you're talking about that, you make me think about how what potentially happened is that you disrupted people's notion. I mean, when you stepped fully into your power, you may have disrupted people's notion of what you should be as a woman, and they rebelled against that. And so that potentially caused you to recoil and have to do all of that questioning and overthinking, because you were noticing maybe that people would have a reaction whenever you just did what was
a lot
natural.
Too many reactions.
Well, and there's a wonderful book. It's called Compelling People, and it talks about how as human beings, we have a tendency to just automatically assess everyone we encounter in terms of their strength and their warmth. And we have some assumptions about how much strength they should have and how much warmth they should have based on who they are. So, people may look at me and see, okay, this is a woman, this is a Black woman. I'm expecting, as a woman, she should be high warmth and low strength. But if I show up being high strength, when there's that expectation of low strength, it's unnerving, because it's not fitting into people's assumptions about how things should be working. And so people want to feel safe. They want to feel like, life is working like clockwork. And so when we step outside of people's assumptions about how we're supposed to be, sometimes people will rebel against that. And I think women have been particularly subject to this, because it's interesting. I mean, the realities of being a woman mean that we have to occupy such a wide spectrum. We do have to be leaders in so many ways, and we do and we do also have these natural strengths that come from our socialization, that I believe also come from our physiology. That's my belief as well, that enable us to be these powerhouse leaders. But then there's a narrative that contradicts that. There's a narrative and a conditioning that other people have that contradicts that. So you end up having people just experiencing this dissonance when women really step fully into their strength and into their power, I think. But that's a great book. I want to go back to it, and thank you for triggering that memory of it.
So let's try to put a kind of a foundational guide to female powerhouses showing up as leaders in the workplace, whether that's their own business, whether that is corporate, whether it's like being an employee in a company. What would be those the ground rules, let's say, or the pillars?
I love it. I love it. We're writing a book right here, right now.
Exactly. We've got to expand on that as soon as we have the time. Let's do this. So let's do this exercise. So if we're saying for you to show up as a leader authentically, what would you need to embrace? What would you need to think about? What would you need to consider? Or what other thoughts do you have?
Well, the first thought that comes up for me is don't dim your light.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't dim your light.
I mean, and we say it, and it's become generic, but it is so true. It is so true, because I know I'm still healing from that. I'm like, I spent 12 plus years in corporate, 11 years now between different businesses with partners and no partners and everything. And I still find myself sometimes dimming my light. And I'm still working on that because I had been conditioned for so long. I'm being conditioned to, oh, no, that's not what we want. Just do, when I was in marketing, just do a brochure and an ad for the project. I'm like, seriously? You're doing a project that is like fundamentally not right for this market, blah, 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 whatever it is. And I got shushed. And I got asked to, this is your scope, don't come out of your scope. But I am speaking my scope. No, not the scope we want you to be speaking about, And these are the kind of things. So, and I found myself dimming my light because do I want to be in conflict on a daily basis in my workplace? Or do I want to show up and be, all the labels that we get as soon as you go off track as a woman in the workplace? Oh, she's the whatever. Do I want to be labeled that way? Do I want to be ostracized? Do I want to be alienated? Do I want to be sidetracked? Whatever it is. So don't dim your light. That's fundamental one.
Yes. Well, so I came up with the first one. It's your turn to come up with the second one.
Speak your mind. And maybe no matter what the consequences are. But because again, speak your mind does not mean being aggressive and rude. Speak your mind means that I would like to put on record that this was not what I agree with, or from my experience, because we have to keep using and utilizing, capitalizing on our experiences and our education and our accreditations and whatever it is. And sometimes we fail to forget that we've got those. but let's bring them in and say, speak your mind. It's like, this is not right. I have no problem standing up and saying this is not right, because from my professional experience and from my personal experience, these are the consequences of this decision or whatever it is.
No, I really resonate with that. And I think that's right on point. And I mean, you've pointed out all of the fears that come up, right?
Yeah.
And my humble opinion is that in a certain way, those fears are valid. And a person who makes the decision to step fully into themselves does also need to bring with them courage and a trust that, yes, potentially in speaking your mind, people may be sufficiently uncomfortable with you that they reject you. And maybe that's a sign that you're someplace you weren't supposed to be. And maybe that's the way your life is going to move you into a place that's going to allow you to be fully yourself.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't want to downplay the fact that there will be consequences. There will be consequences of shining your light. There will be consequences of speaking your mind. And it's important to trust that potentially, or I believe definitely, those consequences are your life positioning you to be the fullest expression of yourself, to make the fullest contribution that you can make. And that maybe you can't make those contributions in that space that doesn't allow you to do that. And it can be uncomfortable. The transition can be uncomfortable.
Yes, of course. And you might have to, well, personally, that was my experiences. I stepped out of corporate for these reasons, that I could just no longer keep up this daily resistance and struggle just to speak my mind and not dim my light and all of this. And I was getting physically ill as well. And it was just like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore, Well, I went into entrepreneurship after this and starting up private businesses and everything. And again, this was another point about 6 years later where I stepped out of that for fundamentally a big chunk of the reasons where that's again. But so these are the first two parts. And this is to kind of ground yourself among your peer leaders or the leadership within the organization. Let's put two pillars for stepping into your role as a leader of a team. So from the other perspective, what would be like the first one you would say?
I think the first one is that you need to authentically care. You need to authentically care about the people that you're leading. Yeah, that's what comes up for me first. And I think what part of that word authentic is about integrity. It's about fundamentally having integrity as a person. And when I say integrity, I mean what is without matches what is within. It's not that you're acting like you care, but you really don't care. There needs to be alignment. And that sort of alignment between what's outside and what's inside has to apply, not just in terms of you're really caring about the people that you are leading, but in all aspects of who you are. It's difficult to be a really good leader if you don't have integrity. So I guess I'm kind of stepping into.
That's true. Yeah, but that is exactly it. And I think coming from that and building on that, I would say as well that the caring, authentic leadership role also entails that you become a facilitator. And the facilitator and the observer would authentically look at her team and look at their core competences. And even if she feels like that person is not in the right place, and that right place is not within the team, even it could be somewhere else in the organization or outside the organization, that she would put the priority of that person's development over just the tasks and the responsibilities of the team and what needs to be done.
No,
I think that's a leadership role, is realizing when someone's a square in a round peg, or what is it, round, a square peg in a round hole, or the other way around.
Either way, it's wrong. Yes, yeah.
And instead of getting frustrated, and instead of saying, "Oh no, you could do this, just fill the hole for now," and we know that really doesn't work best for the team and for the person and for the organization as a whole, is to be able to support them into discovering where would they be the best fit and the best match, and capitalize on their core competences.
Yes, and that what you just said has such a profound ripple effect. I mean, it's not just about, caring about that person. It's about effectiveness of the team, because you're opening a space for someone who's a better fit to enter that role. You're also building trust within your team. Your team is going to see how you handled that person, and they're going to trust you more or trust you less, depending on how you handled that person. And who knows where that person is going to land and how they'll become an ally for you, whether it's to do business with another entity that they are connected to, whether it is, when you move on to your next chapter. I mean, there are so many positive things that can come from what you've described, I mean, not just in terms of the human element, but from a very, sort of bottom line focused way of looking at it. So no, I resonate with that totally, and I agree.
Well, I know we can keep going on to get to a list of 50, but I think we've put a good foundation for now. I think we need to have some follow-up sessions to fill up the book. But I'm loving this, and the discussion of women, leadership, conditioning, what else, that is effectiveness of a role as a person, as the effectiveness and productivity of the team, the impact within the organization, the labels that come along with it. the positive, we touched on a lot. Yes. I think within all that, there's a lot still to be said. I think we're just barely scratching the surface. And I know I've interviewed a couple of amazing women leaders, and yet I could immediately sense their overpowering masculine energy, because that's how they need to show up. And I I put in my best effort. I don't know if I have achieved it or not, to just kind of, let's mellow this a bit. We don't know, we don't need you to show up right here like that. But I know that it impacts our life, and I know it impacts our mental, emotional, physical, spiritual health when we have to keep stepping out of alignment for a certain role and then coming back and saying, okay, now I need to go back to doing these roles with a different mindset, with a different attitude, with a different, and I don't know. Personally, I think we can show up in our life in the different elements and aspects of our life. Of course, we amend a bit and we shift a bit because we have to adapt. But I don't think we have to be different personas to be able to carry out our life authentically.
No, I resonate with that. And so I think you've hit on an important challenge that we face as women, which is when we find that it is our calling to step into leadership. We've gotten a lot of messages about what that means, and the archetypes that we've been exposed to are very particular. And they're often this masculine mold that you've talked about. And at the same time, I do think there is an opportunity. I mean, I think personally, I resonate with the notion that men and women, the masculine and feminine, are there to support each other's development and expansion. I think that there are things that women can gain from using the masculine, and I think there are things that men can gain by using the feminine. I think the challenge is that the masculine has been held up as sort of the superior and the preferred way of doing things. And so, I say that to say, it's not always necessarily, in my opinion, a bad thing when women step into the masculine. I do think there is a tendency to be out of balance with that, though. And I agree with you. I think it's out of balance with it in a way that is not allowing people to be fully themselves. And yes, us believing in a growth mindset, of course, we evolve and we grow, and we reveal parts of ourselves that we didn't know were there as life challenges us. And at the same time, I think we can sometimes sort of stuff down what is authentic and true for us in an effort to be accepted. And so this is, I think, the challenge that we need to address is really making sure, look, is this really me being authentic, or is this me trying on a persona, as you called it, putting on a persona that's not really authentic to me because I've been taught this is what is required.
This is what's expected.
This is what is expected. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you for allowing me the space to start this conversation. I know we still have a lot more to unveil over here, but I'm happy that these conversations are happening now, and these conversations are hopefully would be contributing to our awareness of how we show up in the world, how we show up as leaders, as female leaders, and how we authentically show up in the world as our own person, not persona, as our own person, and how we can, shine our light.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for inviting me to be part of this conversation with you, and my hope is that it just sparks, if nothing else, it sparks, people reflecting on, whether they are giving themselves permission to step into their roles authentically, and what it's costing them if they're not doing so, and what it could be like if they did do so, and the fact that, yes, there is a risk and it's worth it, however it turns out. So thank you for holding this space.
Thank you, Katie. Well, I think there's nothing more for me to say here. I don't even have a closing statement anymore. I think I'm just going to say, you're paying the price anyway, whether you show up authentically or you show up as expected of you. So I would just say, pick the price and see how you want to proceed with it. And it's going to take time, as we said. It's the challenge. It will take time. It will take a few iterations. You will pay some taxes on your decisions and how you show up in your actions. But one day you're going to wake up and say, this was totally worth it. I'm empowered to grow. Thank you for being here with us today. And as always, I wish you love, abundance, and prosperity. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to the Empowered to Grow podcast. For further engagement with a tribe of empowered women, join my Facebook group, Empowered to Grow, or visit my website, www.hananalbasha.com. I'll catch you on the next episode. And until then, know that empowered you empowers others. Love, abundance, and prosperity to you all.